So today, we're going to talk about something huge. It's a massive shift happening right under our noses in the economy. We're talking about a change to the very idea of ownership itself, a whole new system powered by some incredible technology that could completely change how we invest, how we own things, and how we build wealth. You ever look at a giant skyscraper or maybe a famous painting in a museum and just think, wow, I wish I could own a piece of that? I mean, for most of history, that's been a total fantasy, right? But what if it wasn't? What if you could actually own a tiny fraction of, well, just about anything valuable in the world? So let's get into how this is even possible. First, we're going to draw a new map of the economy. Then we'll look at the absolutely staggering numbers behind this whole thing. After that, we'll check out how some companies are actually making this happen. And finally, we'll look at the roadmap for the next decade and a half. All right, let's dive right in. To really get what's happening here, you have to understand that we're basically living between two different economic worlds right now. On one hand, you've got the off-chain economy. This is the world we all know. Traditional banks, physical stuff, centralized systems where one company or one group is in charge. But then there's this new on-chain economy. It's all built on blockchain. And in this world, ownership isn't some piece of paper in a dusty file cabinet. It's a super secure, transparent digital token. And understanding this difference, well, it's the key to everything else we're going to talk about. Okay, so the first piece of this puzzle is something called real-world assets, or RWAs. The idea is actually pretty simple, but it is so powerful. You take a real-life thing, like a building, a piece of art, or even shares in a startup, and you create a digital token on the blockchain that represents ownership of it. Then you've got real-world finance, or RWF. This is where you take traditional financial stuff, like a bond or a loan, basically anything that promises to pay you back over time, and you put that on the blockchain too. You're basically tokenizing the cash flow. And this is where it gets really, really cool. You can actually combine the two into what are called real-world hybrids. Just imagine, you could have a single token that proves you own a piece of an apartment building, and it automatically pays you your share of the rent every month. That's a hybrid, and it opens up a whole new world of possibilities. So that's the what. Now let's get to the big question. Why does any of this matter? Why are people calling this one of the biggest economic shifts of our lifetime? Well, the potential scale is, honestly, it's hard to wrap your head around. Boston Consulting Group did this big report, and they project that the market for tokenized assets could hit $16 trillion by 2030. Just let that number sink in for a second. 16 trillion. That is bigger than the entire economy of most major countries. And what's really fascinating is where all that value is supposed to come from. It's not just one little niche. We're talking about tokenizing everything, the equity in our homes, corporate bonds, private investment funds, you name it. So this isn't about creating some new, separate market. It's about fundamentally upgrading the infrastructure of the global economy we already have. And the reason this is happening is because it solves some really big problems. It makes investing more democratic, opening up things that were once only for the super rich. It unlocks value in assets like buildings that are hard to sell by turning them into things you can trade easily. It adds a layer of transparency that you just don't get in the old systems. And crucially, it allows for fractional ownership, which means you don't need millions of dollars to get in the game. Okay, so this all sounds amazing in theory, right? But how does it actually work in the real world? Let's bring this down to earth and look at a company called Quamix, which is building the plumbing for this on-chain future as we speak. Their entire mission is built around this idea of equality of opportunity. For them, this technology isn't just about finance. It's about building a fairer, more accessible economic system for everybody. So here's how their process breaks down. Step 1, they take a real-world asset and legally turn it into digital security tokens. Step 2, those tokens go through a bunch of compliance checks and then get listed on their exchange. Step 3, this is the cool part. Anyone from anywhere in the world can buy and sell tiny pieces of that asset 24/7. And finally, step 4, if that asset makes money, like from rent, the profits get sent out automatically and transparently to all the token holders. It's a really smooth end-to-end system. So the big picture, the ultimate goal here is to build a financial system without borders. A system where, a student in Sao Paulo or a small business owner in Nairobi can co-own a piece of prime Manhattan real estate. We're talking about assets that have been completely out of reach for almost everyone forever. Now, a change this big doesn't just happen overnight. The visionaries in this space, people like Mars Pouyan, have actually thought this through and have mapped out how this global shift could play out over time. The whole journey is seen as happening in 3 waves, over about 15 years. We're pretty much in wave 1 right now, building the basic tech and working with regulators. Wave 2, that's the next 5 to 10 years, is when this whole idea of fractional ownership really goes mainstream. And then wave 3, that's the paradigm shift. That's when the on-chain and off-chain worlds just kind of merge and become one seamless thing. The main thing to get from this roadmap is that this isn't some chaotic, random gold rush. It's a very deliberate, structured evolution. It's a step-by-step process of building, testing, and scaling up the new rails for a much more connected and efficient global economy. But let's be real, it's not going to be a perfectly smooth ride. There are some major hurdles. We absolutely need clear rules from governments. We need to make sure all these different platforms can talk to each other. And maybe most importantly, these new markets need tons of buyers and sellers to actually work well. These are the really tough problems that are being tackled right now. But even with those challenges, the destination seems pretty clear. A world where you can own a piece of anything from anywhere. And that's way more than just a new way to invest. It's a completely different way of thinking about our relationship with the world around us. It really redefines what ownership even means. Which kind of brings us to one last question to leave you with. As this all becomes reality, the question isn't going to be if you can own a piece of the world, but which piece you're going to choose. So, if you could own a tiny fraction of absolutely anything, what would it be?